Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us in today's episode of BioWiz podcast, Meet the Weezard. I am Elizabeth and I am happy to be here today with Mario Ubiali, the CEO of Thimus. Hi Mario, how are you?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm fine.
So Mario, let me start by asking you what we are asking all our guests here. Could you please tell us a bit more about your journey and what led you to where you are today?
Well, my journey is I think, an interesting one, or I hope so. Well, it's been very interesting for me. I am a person who comes from humanity and social science studies. And I am an entrepreneur by birth, if you can say that. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I'm a third generation entrepreneur. And so my journey has been long and winding. Before I got to neurosciences, I was a small entrepreneur with my family in a completely unrelated industry. And then I created my own company, which was also very technical and not in neurosciences, which I grew from the bottom, from nothing to growing as an international network between 2002 and 2014, at which point that network of companies was very successful. I had lived in the States and in Canada for a while, and a large multinational group acquired my former company. And then in 2016, I got the bug. My interest as an entrepreneur was tickled by the perspectives on applied neuroscience. And that's how I started exploring the concept of Thimus. And this is what led me to where I am now, that I got into this out of entrepreneurial interest, and I stayed for the fascination with the science, I guess.
So let's discuss Thimus a little bit more in details. Could you tell us about your innovation?
Absolutely. Thimus was born in 2016, and the innovation at the core of what we do is a rather simple in a way, but simple as a concept, and certainly very complex in terms of technology and know-how. It's based on the idea of taking neuroscience, which has been confined to scientific clinical studies in hospitals and research centers, outside of those labs, outside of clinical applications. The challenge and the innovation there is basically summed up in a question, which is, can we use advanced real-life applied neuroscience to explain and understand human behavior and motivation? And can we do that so that we can help companies, businesses, understanding consumer behavior and motivation better? And this became really the challenge that we started from. And the real innovation is, the answer is positive. Yes, we can. It's a complex job to do, but we have managed to take neuroscience out of that very controlled domain of research and papers and a classic application to clinical studies. And without losing the rigor of scientific research, we have brought it out in the wild. And this has been a journey, and it still is a journey, because you face a number of challenges. I want to say challenges in terms of how the scientific community views you doing that as a private for-profit company, and challenges in the acceptance. It's so innovative to think that we can use neuroscience to take a look into people's minds and processes, that it takes a while for the wider market to accept the idea that this is a reliable and scalable technology.
So how do you deal with those challenges?
Well, I think you deal with those challenges in a number of ways. If I had to indicate a basic principle, first of all, you want to do excellent work. If you focus on the absolute, I want to say, the utmost best that you can do at your job. So if you focus on being very rigorous on the way you collect data, treat data, analyze it, and make sense of it, I want to say that's like the starting point. It's the basic point. And you might think it's kind of a simple thing to say, but in the domain of applied neuroscience, especially in the last few years, there's been a lot of buzzwords, including the word neuromarketing. And that space has been quickly filled by players who would grab technology off the shelf and run with very uncustomized, unverified metrics. And they didn't do a great job in favor of promoting the idea of neuroscience in real life. We took a different approach. So to answer your question, you face the challenge towards the science community by being very rigorous the way you work, by tapping into academic and scientific research, and by partnering with partners who have credibility to show that you really care about the quality of what you do. Out of our minimal stuff, we're still a very small company, but out of 13 employees, we have 2 biomedical engineers and 6 neuroscientists. So there's quite a bit of power there in terms of wanting to be really dedicated to good science. In terms of the acceptance outwards into the market, you respond to that challenge basically by creating tangible value. I think ultimately any business, any startup needs to be demonstrating that there is a tangible strategic added value that you can propose to the market. And so best response to slow acceptance is to go out there, do an excellent job, and get customers who actually make more money or make a better product or have happier end customers. And this tells the whole story. Ultimately, there's a level of credibility that comes from science, and there's a level of credibility that comes from the application of science in real world.
Okay, so based on all the possible applications of your innovation to the real world and the market, you decided to focus also on the food industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yes, we have decided to focus heavily on the food and beverages industry. And then to a point, I think that has come both as a serendipitous happening, something that simply was almost naturally and organically happening to Thimus. And it also came as a strategic choice. It's been a weird interaction of those two aspects. We started out being extremely open to any kind of application. And in fact, we have excellent case histories in automotive, in fashion and apparel, in airlines, you name it. But as time progressed, we did realize that we were being heard almost like better and louder in the food and beverage space. We believe it's because the food and beverage space is producing something and proposing something to humans which is so inherently profound and biologically radical for humans. You know, humans will always eat, will always drink, well, at least we hope so. And so there's that element of being a very profound emotional, cultural experience for people, for humans. Therefore, the food and beverage industry seemed to have a more natural inclination to use neuroscience because there's always been a traditional attention to the emotions and the interaction with the consumer. And so this dragged us slowly in a position where, for example, in November of 2019, we were doing a demo on stage in New York City at the Wall Street Journal Global Food Festival in front of an incredible and amazing audience. And right there, we realized that the circumstances were dictating that we would need to make a choice now. And because we were being heard so well and welcomed by that kind of industry and space, we decided, well, you know what? We should probably start really focusing a little more on this kind of space because it deserves attention. And the more we focused and poured energies into it, the more these energies attracted positive energy. And so we ended up having wonderful and still having wonderful global customers who are very interested in very high level briefs with us, very complex topics. So it's exciting because now that we're immersing ourselves into that space, we are truly enjoying the complexities of what we do, but also we're so satisfied with the fact that we're really into the thick of things. We're really contributing to the future of food systems. And I think that's a privilege, and it's a little bit of a responsibility too.
That's for sure. Can you be a bit more specific and to describe to us your product and how does the fact that you're going on the food direction impact the design of the product? How does it work exactly?
Oh, yeah. Yes, being specific is something that we need to do, because when you talk about neuroscience, you tend to be very generic. What are we proposing to the market? It's actually a two-tier kind of relationship. So if you're a customer, if you're a player in the food and beverage industry, and you come to us, what you want to be doing basically is utilizing the power of neuroscience to understand consumers better. And you have two choices, which don't exclude one the other. You can work with Thimus on a service level. So you can come to us with a brief and say, can you please take care of this very complex research for me? And sometimes this means very complex topics that require not just the neurophysiological data, but anthropology, ethnography, psychology, and a lot of other disciplines, which we can do. A good example of that, to give you, again, some real examples, food companies would come to us and say, what is the role of texture in the success of an alternative protein product that I want to launch on the Chinese market, right? So it's a very specific question, but it's also a very complex question to answer to. And maybe they don't feel comfortable with just taking our technology and use it themselves. They want to have us assist in them. So this is the bespoke service. This is, you go to a tailor takes your, has a tape, takes your measurements, and makes a wonderful dress for you. The second kind of product that we propose is quite different in the way you use it. It could be that a company has an interest to integrate our technology in the way they do consumer research internally. So what they do is they subscribe to a licensing formula with us. And what they get is they get the entire toolkit that they need to run studies with neuroscience and our know-how, but in-house and without us being there to assist them. So what they get is they get a set of hardware devices, EEGs, electroencephalograms, which we designed. It's a proprietary technology that we have developed. And they get a license to use those with a dedicated software. And then all their data is protected. It's allocated in servers that belong to the correct geographical region that they request to have it. Mm-hmm. And then they can retrieve data and analyze it on a front end, which is cloud-based. So either bespoke services or licensed platforms for consumer insights based on neuroscience. That's the summary of what we have to offer.
That's amazing. Besides food industry, what's next for Thimus? In which direction are you looking at now?
I have to be honest, and this is a little bit of a preview that I'm only giving to you. This is coming straight out of the crucible here. We still are very interested in the food and beverage space. I think what's next for Thimus is, in fact, like a further step in a good direction in that space. We are launching this year, hopefully in the summer, the initiative that is called the Neurofood Lab. The Neurofood Lab is a space for permanent research on humans and food. And the news there is that Thimus is now venturing into being a voice and an actor, a player in the scene of future food, and not necessarily in commercial projects. We would like to establish a physical space for research where we can contribute to the debate and the research, even on a scientific and anthropological and cultural level, on the future of food. We would like to by doing so, we would like to send a message loud and clear, which is, let's use neuroscience to bring humans back to the center of the equation. Especially in the food equation, there's been, as you know, a lot of discussion about the future of food and alternative proteins and how to feed a 10 billion people planet, which is absolutely the topic. But in looking for technology and solutions to that challenge, we very often overlook the topic of what are humans in this equation? What is going to happen to humans if they have to change their habits, if they have to change their diet, if they have to change the way they shop and consume food? But most fundamentally, let's talk about accessibility. This is a very Western-centered perspective. You know, if we're only talking about alternative meats, and then it turns out alternative meats are 5 times pricier than any other supermarket product, you inherently have a challenge that is also equitable access to food alternatives. So we certainly cannot hope to solve those problems. It's not for us, it's probably for the UN or somebody else. But our contribution, we hope, and this is where we're going next, is can we contribute to the debate about it? Can we show hard data about how humans nourish themselves through food and how important it is that they do so in a certain social way, in a certain cultural framework? So if we can contribute to that conversation, which we're trying to build that space and also some connections to other players around the world on this topic, we can do a little bit to keep, again, the absolute central role that the human being per se needs to have in that equation, I guess.
That's an amazing challenge.
Thank you. It's a big one.
It's a big one. I wish you the best of luck with that. You are welcome at any time. Thank you so much, Mario, for your time, for sharing with us your views, your amazing innovation. And we are looking forward to all of your progress.
Well, thank you. It's been a privilege and a great stage for me to talk about Thimus. So we thank you so much for the opportunity.